everyone, and welcome back to Occupational Therapy 236, OT with Youth, and this is our wheelchair measurement lecture. My name is Melisa Kaye, and I'm your instructor for today. Let's go ahead and get started with this second part, looking at how do we fit someone for a wheelchair. Again, keep in mind that at the end of these lectures, you will not be an expert at wheelchair fitting. You don't need to be an expert at wheelchair fitting. What the purpose is to give you a solid introduction. This is something that takes a lot of time and additional experience and training. So getting the basics down today is going to be put you in a great spot for moving forward. All right. This is the first of two slides about principles of wheelchair measurement. So wheelchairs facilitate mobility and independence, and therefore they should fit the client effectively. If they don't fit the client effectively, it can be hazardous to their health and hazardous to anybody else or other things that are in the environment. And all clients should be evaluated before we measure them for a wheelchair. So it includes strengths and deficits, things like range of motion, muscle strength, mobility, any kind of medical issues that are going on, etc. And I do have a video that's linked to this slide deck that shows fitting of or evaluation for a wheelchair, as well as some of the fitting. And interestingly, it's also done via telehealth. So that's pretty cool. At least the wheelchair expert is on telehealth. All right. So I know I've mentioned this before, but please do download the slide deck so that you can access the presenter notes. There's a lot of great resources and other information that you can find in there. Principles 2. The client should be seated on a firm surface for measurement. What this does is takes the guesswork out of your measurement. And there's no standard sequence of measuring a client for a wheelchair, but there's a certain a number of different measurements, which we'll be going into in some detail, that you need to accomplish by the end of the session. OTs, PTs, or wheelchair specialists can all do the measurement, and we focus on some key areas of the body when we're measuring. And these are the scapula, so that's for the back of the chair, the greater trochanter for the hip width for the seat, the ischial tuberosities, and the popliteal area of the knee. So the back of the knee is important for ground to seat measurement. And just to note, the ischial tuberosities, the sits bones, are important when we're determining how much weight is placed on the person's buttocks, and we want to be really careful about wear and tear and too much pressure across the backs of the thighs and the sits bones, and how that's going to affect skin integrity, and also in some cases blood supply if there's quite a bit of dump to the chair. So a body alignment for effective seat, what we're imagining in ideal circumstances, and that's not to say that everyone is that we fit for a wheelchair is going to be able to get to this kind of geometry, is that from the trunk to the hips is a 90-degree angle between the trunk and the hips. There's a 90-degree angle, and that's the G on this drawing. There's a 90-degree angle from the knees to the hips, and then there's another 90-degree angle from the ankle to the foot. So we want this nice geometric shape. And then we go from there in terms of what's realistic for the individual. Here are some general tips. We always want to explain the process of wheelchair fitting and evaluation before we actually engage in the process. We ask for consent to perform the evaluation and also to touch the client. We want to keep the measuring tape straight rather than wrapping the body. That's going to give us a more accurate measure. And we want to measure the rigid frame of the wheelchair seat as opposed to the sling part of the seat or any other feature on the wheelchair. Again, we're looking for accuracy of measurement, and that's going to give us the greatest accuracy. We want to measure the client finally with typical clothing and shoes. So if somebody is living in the Arctic Circle, they're going to have wider hips because their clothing is designed to keep them warm and is going to be by nature bigger. Same thing with shoes. We don't want to measure anyone barefoot. We want to measure them with their typical footwear, which can vary their leg length quite a bit in terms of how high the seat needs to be. So jumping right in, one of the things that we're going to measure is the seat width. While the client is seated, we're going to measure across the hips or thighs, whichever is wider, and add 1 to 2 inches. So that's going to give them some leeway on the sides of the seat. The objective of this is to distribute the client's weight over the widest possible surface. Problems with poor fit, if a seat is too narrow, it's going to create difficulty with transferring, poor weight distribution, so they're not going to have that little bit of wiggle room, but a nice solid seat. Pressure areas on the sides of the hips, right? So if we're squishing them in, the sides of the wheelchair are going to be pressing. If the chair is too wide, we might wind up with instability in sitting, right? So they're not supported enough. Difficulty with propulsion because they're having to move their arms really far out, or difficulty with architectural barriers. So if that wheelchair is super wide, it may not make it in small, confined indoor spaces. The next measurement is seat depth. How to measure? We measure behind the knee, so the popliteal area, to the back of the buttocks, and then we subtract 1 to 2 inches. So with the width, we're adding 1 to 2 inches for a little bit of wiggle room. With the seat depth, we're subtracting 1 to 2 inches because we don't want that wheelchair seat hitting them in the back of the knee. We want to support the weight across the entire length of the thigh and to normalize tone. Potential problems with poor fit include if the seat is too long, it can irritate the skin at the back of the knee and restrict circulation. And if the measurement is too short or the seat is too short, there's not enough even weight distribution, right? So you're sitting on a little plank instead of a good-sized seat. And you can put excessive pressure on the buttocks and the sacrum. And all of these slides will have the exact same setup, how to measure the objective and the potential problems with poor fit. So do use these slides and the handout of them or the download of them when you're actually measuring for a wheelchair. The next aspect is leg length, and this is going to be important for the footrest placement. How to measure from the heel to the back of the knee. And we want to account for the height of the seat cushion if applicable. So if there's a cushion there, we want to put the cushion on, and we want to keep 2 inches of clearance from the floor. So that's going to give us some clearance so that the footrest doesn't drag on the floor or bump when we go up and down. The objective is even distribution of pressure along the thighs. So if the footrests are too low, the pressure is down under the thighs, right? And the footrest can drag. It also can contribute to foot drop, which is a condition where the foot goes into a little bit of pointing or dorsiflexion. No, plantar. Oh, I'm on camera. Foot point. You tell me, dorsi or plantar flexion. I'm getting my terms confused this morning. And then if the footrest is too high, the weight is shifted back to the buttocks, right? So now my knees are up a little bit and there's increased pressure on the ischium and the sacrum. So neither situation is ideal. So we want this measurement to be really accurate. Then we have the seat height. How to measure from the floor to the seat platform. And we don't want to measure, as I said earlier, from that middle of the sling seat where it could be a little bit lower. We want to measure from the rigid part of the seam of the seat where the actual seating material is attached to the frame. The objective is to support the patient's body with thighs parallel to the ground or floor and to maintain that foot plate clearance that we just talked about. Potential problems include if it's too low, poor weight distribution, and the weight is shifted to the buttocks. And if it's too high, we may have environmental difficulties, including knees being obstructed under desks or tables, and difficulty in propelling the chair. Next up is armrest height, and how we want to measure is from the seat base to just under the elbow, and that's with the arms at 90 degrees, as you can see in this drawing. The objective is to provide support to the arm to enhance posture and balance, right? So if we're tipped forward, we're going to be leaning forward. If we're going back too far, we're out of our balance and sort of a center of our base of support. And we want to allow the client to use the armrest to assist in changing positions, right? So pushing down and doing some weight shifts. But we want to balance that with not obstructing their ability to propel their wheelchair. So if the armrests are too high, you're going to have to reach over, and that is not good on your shoulders. It doesn't give you effective push, etc. Some problems potentially with poor fit include if the armrests are too low, there's not enough support. It can cause poor posture, as I indicated, or fatigue or balance problems, and it might affect respiration, right? So if we're collapsing the trunk down, our lungs are not having their optimal amount of space, nor is our diaphragm, and so that can restrict our breath. And if the armrests are too high, the shoulders elevate, right? So if my armrests are up here, my shoulders are elevating, that can cause fatigue. It can crunch up all of the muscles of the shoulder and neck. The client won't use the armrest because it feels uncomfortable, and it can contribute to a loss of stability while in the chair. Next up is back height. And as you saw in the wheelchair basics, back height varies really greatly depending on the upper body stability and ability and skill of the client, and also what they need the chair for, right? So what purpose it's serving in their life and their occupations, and where, if they have a spinal cord injury, where the level of the lesion is, if they have other issues, how much support do they need from that back, and how much can they support their own trunk. We measure from the seat platform to the armpit, and then we subtract 4 inches. So this is the general rule as opposed to the specialized. The objective is to provide adequate trunk support so that you can maintain good posture and trunk control. And as I said, it's going to vary depending on who that client is, how strong they are, and what occupations they engage in. Potential problems: if the back height is too high, it obstructs propelling. So again, imagine a cage around the person or a cage-like structure. Anything that's impeding their arms getting to the rims of the wheels is going to be problematic. It also increases pressure on the back, the scapula, and the vertebra, and that can result in pressure that we don't want. And then if the back height is too low, there's obviously, I said that again. I'm not doing so good this morning, you guys. It's very early my time, as you can tell by the roosters. So I'm going to try to do my very best and get this to you as soon as possible. All right, back height too low. inadequate trunk and postural control for some clients if they don't have good postural and trunk control. Thanks for bearing with me. When we evaluate for fit, the client is often issued a temporary wheelchair, but that is typically not a customized fit. And what we do is we optimize the fit to improve the form or function while they're in that wheelchair and they're waiting for their forever wheelchair. Some ways to adjust standard wheelchair fit is to add a firmer seat base via an insert or cushion, to give some more side supports, and we can do that in a variety of ways, and to adjust the leg rests. So those are some ways that we can take a standard chair and we can make it more functional and amenable for the client. While we're together in the classroom, we're going to be looking at a lot of different aspects of wheelchair fitting and measuring and propulsion and all of that kind of thing. So we're going to measure wheelchairs. We're going to measure the client for the wheelchair. We're going to talk about within that other evaluation issues when we're thinking about this measurement process. We're going to compare and contrast fit. So you all are going to be sitting in chairs and we're going to look at, does it fit you well? Does it not? If not, what's wrong? So that you can identify when a chair is ill-fitting and when it is effectively fitting. And we'll look at potential fit improvements that we can do on the fly, but also things that could be ordered and customized when the client gets their forever chair or their at least for the next few years chair. And then if we have time, we'll also practice some wheelchair mobility. So I have included resources for wheelchair mobility in this video, in the presenter notes, and I can't wait to see you in class. So have a great day. Thanks for your attention. Please write down any questions you have, and I will see you very soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.